can definitely see a world where actually restrictions from banks come off investment properties in terms of like LVR restrictions, high interest rates for low deposits. I can see those coming off as well because like primarily banks like to lend money. And as the housing market, if it doesn't pick up to its normal growth rate, they're going to be going, right, how do we make sure that we're getting money out the door?
We are back in your life, and today it's shares versus property part 2. What's going to happen over the next 10 years? I'm here with my man, Michael Vincent. Mikey boy, every single day are here. Property's done. It's cooked. The share market's up. What do you reckon?
Oh, like I get the sentiment. I definitely get the sentiment, right? It's been a rough ride for property for the last, I'd say 4 years has been pretty, if you've been a property investor, it's been tough, right? And that's not just with the growth of the house prices, they've come back 20%, 30% in some cases, but also like interest deductibility, a lot more rules around renters, it's now harder to be a landlord. So I get it, but that doesn't mean it's dead.
Yeah, and for those who think, these guys are just going to pump up property. Well, Mike's a mortgage broker, so he's absolutely going to pump the hell out of it. My background is in shares and investment portfolios.
So James is going to pump shares.
Yeah, I might have, a few properties, but I've got probably a more balanced view than Michael does when it comes to the... I'm Switzerland.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be just like property's back, baby, or anything like that. If we look at the historical data first, Mike, we have talked about that before, but I think it's quite a good starting point, particularly when it comes to property, because if you make a decision over the last 5 years, nobody's going anywhere near it.
Yeah, and property's been like New Zealand's go-to wealth builder for decades, man, and it was early on, like the 60s, 70s, it wasn't really an asset class that people are investing in, but later, like 90s, 2000s, 80s to a degree as well, it really started to become that people were investing in. On average, it delivers about 6 to 7% growth per year. So house prices increase on average about 6 to 7% per year. The big question there though is just, are we going to see that going forward? You know what I mean? And I think that's the question that people need to ask themselves now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Auckland house prices over the past 10 years, so bring it over a shorter period of time, it's only 3.8% per annum.
Yeah.
And you're, it's not 6 or 7.
I know.
But obviously, Auckland has had a 20% drop in house prices over the past 4 years, which will skew that shorter term data.
Yeah, and if you look at the S&P 500 over the same period, that's 10% annual returns, right?
It is. And if you put $10,000 into the S&P 500 20 years ago with $82,000 today.
And look, I'm not going to make this stat up because I know the stat is roughly true, right? Don't quote me on it though. But if I put $10,000 into the housing market 20 years ago and got like a mortgage, I'd reckon I'd have more than that.
Yeah, I don't know how far a $10,000 deposit's going.
As I said it, I was like, oh man, a $10,000 deposit don't get you much. But if I had a $10,000 deposit, did a springboard loan with my parents, used some of their equity, got a $700,000 house, I have more than that.
All right, comment section, you have full permission to roast Michael for saying, if I had $10,000 in mummy and daddy, I would own a lot of property. God, I can't believe you said that. Do not cut that out, Em. So once again, historically, property and shares have both done really well. The question is, I guess, when it comes to property going forward and being like, how many times do you hear the phrase, I know it's done that, but just won't do that going forward?
Oh, constantly. But like, I think why are we questioning whether or not it will continue to run at the same growth per annum going forward? That's the question. What do we think? Why are people thinking this, right? And I think, if we're looking at it from a structural level, it will be things like a decrease in house demand over the short term, but supply increasing over the long term. Capital gains tax coming in, leveling the playing field with other asset classes. So there are a lot of factors that could actually mean that actually, you know what, house prices or the growth in house prices is pulled back to just what inflation is doing.
So let me just ask you, Mike, do you think future housing returns will structurally look different from the past? Or do you think people underestimate how resilient the property market is?
I think they will look different. but I think that difference is probably only by like 1% per year. I think you're probably averaging like 5 to 6% instead of 6 to 7%. And maybe then, and again, like humans are short-sighted creatures, right? We're really good at thinking over 6 months and a year. Beyond a year, humans aren't that great at thinking, right? We're not great long-term planners, me especially. So like, but what you've got to remember is people have very short memories as well. So, you know, again, people are looking at it being like, oh, it's been down for a little while now. It's never coming back. Yeah, it may not come back to the same like highs that it has been, but over the long term, you'll start to see a more normal growth pattern.
Yeah, I think a lot of the argument around property not growing in the future comes down to debt to income ratios as a big argument and wealth inequality, which are two very interesting ones. I looked up what's happened to income growth over the past 10 years. It's increased 4.3% to be precise, on the median salary over the past decade. Yeah. And you go like, well, if debt to income ratios are roughly going to stay the same, maybe 4 instead of 6, but they will roughly start to balance each other out, right?
Debt to income, schmet to income. I can get around those. Who cares?
Cool. 0800 hard money Mike.
You can get around them. I don't know why like everyone's like, oh, the debt to income ratio. Like it's really easy to get around a debt to income ratio limit.
But I think
not like illegally. I'm not like doing anything illegal. I'm just saying like there's a really straightforward way to get around them.
My point is more that people can only afford so much compared to their income, right? Yes, you might get them to a higher debt to income ratio.
Get a better mortgage broker.
So that's my first piece. The other question is around like inequality, right? Inequality continues to, I think it'll only get worse and worse over time. And the question is, well, if that happens, who's going to buy the houses? And you look at it and you go like, rich people don't really want to, like really wealthy people don't really want to own like 100 rental properties because it's a lot of admin, right? Real wealth will pour money into commercial property or something a little bit different. The question though is, if the share market continues to move, if there's more and more wealth concentrated, that has to go somewhere at a certain point. And property becomes more and more attractive at a certain point if it doesn't move. If the share market moves 10% a year and property's only, hypothetically, it's only going to move 2% a year, at some point property becomes undeniably attractive, just like you, and people go like, I'll go talk to them.
Yeah. It's all cycles. I think really fundamentally what we're getting at there is it's all cycles, right? There will be periods of time where property is growing faster than the S&P 500. There'll be periods of time where the S&P 500 makes property look stupid. So again, it's just cycles.
Reverting to the mean, let's talk about the kids, Mike. How do we help these kids? Is younger generations starting to go, I don't want this property thing. They like their Sharesies account. They like the simplicity of investing into shares, pun intended. And will younger generations focusing on shares have an impact on the property market long term?
Well, I actually think we probably have quite differing views on this. I'm going to talk about that after the break.
You saw me work with Rachel and Dion. I am now looking for my next single or couple to get live on the podcast to do a financial plan. If you want to take control of your future, I want you to apply right now so I can change your life. Click the link in the show notes below. Now, back to the episode.
All right, James. So, kids, property, wealth. Again, I said we might have differing views on this. And I think fundamentally what it comes down to is, are younger generations, God, it feels so old to say, going to view property the same way that we have and that generations older than us have, which is a really important asset to buy as quickly as possible and a really good way to grow your wealth. You know, there's an argument that people might go, you know, I'm 25. Yeah, I earn good money. Yeah, I got a bit in my KiwiSaver. But the idea of buying a house seems so unattainable. They actually stuff it. I can't be bothered with it.
Average first home buyer age, 37, Mike.
I know. Look at that. That's wild. I didn't know that stat. I thought it was significantly lower than that.
To answer your question, I think New Zealand's got some more traditional views when it comes to property compared to other parts of the world.
Trad property.
Where it's, you know, in other parts of the world, it's very common to rent throughout your whole life, but we've got this thing around like everybody has the right to own a home still. I do think the percentage of people who will own a home will continue to decrease over time for a variety of factors. One is, to an extent, the returns might not be as attractive. Second, people liking the flexibility of shares and that market becoming more and more accessible as people get educated about it over time. And then third is the wealth inequality.
Yeah, I think you're wrong. I think that owning a property will still be like a primary thing that people want to do forever. I don't think that will ever change. And I think that's actually not linked to returns. It's not linked to, is the market going to go up or down? It's not linked to other forms of assets that you invest in. I think it's primarily linked to the fact that humans fundamentally at some point in their life want to couple up and reproduce and have children. And one of the key indicators that like you are a stable person and can do that is that you have a house, right? And I genuinely think that is probably what will continue to drive house price purchases forever.
I get that. I also think, less and less people are having children over time. I don't disagree with the fact that people will aspire to own a home. I just don't think everybody will be able to.
Yeah, see, but like, again, you talk about like, if you go, okay, if less and less people are buying, there's less and less house price growth, the asset like drops in price, surely that would stabilize to the point where people then can afford to buy the house, right?
I mean, there is a question about who's buying the houses as well.
Well, who else would be buying the houses?
Corporations instead of
So it's going to be
individuals.
Megacorp just owning all the houses and we won't own anything.
There's been trends around that in other parts of the world. Granted, there's a foreign buyers ban in New Zealand. But once again, if the wealth gap continues to grow and there is so much money sitting at the top, that money has to go somewhere over time instead of just the share market.
Yeah. And historically what happens is the people at the bottom kill the people at the top and take the money back. And that's, if you're talking about a cycle, that's a cycle.
So it's the end of capitalism as we know it?
I don't think it's the end of capitalism, but like there's been capitalism throughout revolutions for forever.
Yep.
I can't see businesses, corporation, whatever, owning large blocks of houses at a significant scale where it impacts people's ability to buy houses. I know there are localized cases of this in the United States. I'm fully aware of that. I just don't think, I think the United States has its own set of issues. And I don't think you should translate what's happening there to the rest of the world. I just can't see it happening on a scale where it dramatically stops people from being able to buy houses.
Yeah, and I also would understand government intervention, like in that scenario as well. I just look at it from the concept of share market doing well, property market doing poor, key indicators implying that, debt to incomes over time, going from being able to live off one income to now needing two incomes, to probably everybody needing to be in a throuple in another 10 years.
Yeah.
That those factors will mean that it will be harder for people to own a home in the future, and going, well, if there's all this money over there, at some point does this become a more attractive asset? But I understand government intervention to stop that.
Yeah. What a depressing concept of this like renter life, where you like don't own your house, you rent the music, you rent the TV, you just rent everything, right? Like you don't have a car. Like, wow, what a depressing existence.
So Mike, if we fast forward 20 or 30 years, do you think the largest source of household wealth will be property in New Zealand like it is right now by a long way? Or could you see that changing?
I still think 20 or 30 years in the future, it'll still be property. I think if you went like another 20 or 30 years after that, you would see I think it'd be a pretty dramatic shift where it's probably equal, right? Like your KiwiSaver, your shares, your investments, and your property as well.
Yeah, it's funny. KiwiSaver has had one of those things when it first started, everyone's kind of like, It's going to have like a fundamental shift over time in how Kiwis think about wealth, because they've got this thing going to the side that continues to grow, allowed them to buy their first home, gives them comfort heading into retirement, slowly educating them, but it just takes decades for those balances to really grow.
Yeah, it does. And again, like when we're looking at KiwiSaver, right? Like again, it's about when the people in it, like the earlier people get into KiwiSaver, the better off they are, same as property. How easy is it to transact? And like if we're comparing the two, how easy is it to get into KiwiSaver versus buy a property? Much easier to get into KiwiSaver than buy a property. What are the costs associated with KiwiSaver versus property? Well, there's a management fee to a degree, but it's not a real cost out of your pocket like a property is. So over time, you can make the argument that like it's just getting easier and easier and easier to do the shares. So maybe people will start to like tip that way a little bit more. Because if you think about it in the past, to buy shares, you needed a share broker. And who the hell had a share broker?
I got to say, the way you say buy the shares, you sound like such a boomer.
I am.
So if over time shares became more and more popular and property hypothetically became less popular, I don't know if you know this, Mike, our economy is very much focused around property. What the hell happens? How does our economy, like, nothing happens overnight, right?
Yeah, but then what we're starting to do is deviate from, is it like property as an investment versus property as just a home to live in? You can still have economies that revolve around building houses. It's just we're not building houses to speculate on the price, right? We're not building them as investments. You're just building homes for people to live in. So yeah, it might slow down a bit. But again, that's just going to come all the way back to population growth, right? And demand.
Can we jump to the banks? So like a big part with property being more attractive is the ability to, leverage opposed to when it comes to shares. And I'm not suggesting for a second that banks are going to start giving loans for people to buy shares. But do you think over time the banks will view lending differently? I mean, when it comes to trying to get a loan to buy a business, for example, versus, buying a piece of dirt, substantially easier to buy the piece of dirt. Can you see that changing over time?
No. No, I can't. What is it, like 3 out of every 5 businesses fail? The delinquency rates on home loans are significantly less than that. So the reason it's easier to get a home loan than it is to get a business loan is the risk associated with it. And the price of that loan reflects that as well. Like your interest rate on your business loan versus your interest rate on the house. So I can't see that changing at all, really, because businesses will still continue to fail. Yeah.
People do go to me, they go, James, should I start a business? And I'm like, well, the thing about starting a business, it's all on you. Yeah. It's your ability to execute opposed to buying a property. It's, it's the market conditions.
Just sit there. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can't see that. What I might see kind of changing in the in that space though, around like being able to invest in properties, is I can definitely see a world where actually restrictions from banks come off investment properties in terms of like LVR restrictions, high interest rates for low deposits. I can see those coming off as well, because like primarily banks like to lend money, and as the housing market, if it doesn't pick up to its normal growth rate, they're going to be going, right, how do we make sure that we're getting money out the door? So I can actually see it being easier to lend on property in the future, in the short term. Over the long term, who knows?
Or they just start buying back the insurance companies and the wealth companies so they can make money.
It's just a big cycle.
It is. So if more households over time start to put money into shares and businesses instead of property, that's going to be good for New Zealand's economy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime that there's capital flowing into productive assets is a good thing, right? And shares, you could say, like buying a share, that's putting it into a productive asset. How productive is that if you're buying it on the secondary market and it's not an initial offering? Who knows really? But I think as long as people are investing into assets for their future, whether it's property, shares, crypto, NFTs, silver, gold, they're probably making a good decision.
Yeah, I mean, the only argument for putting money into shares, if 80 to 85% of it is actually going overseas opposed to locally, that doesn't really have an impact on New Zealand.
Yeah, I mean, you're assuming that like the companies don't operate in New Zealand. You know what I mean? Like you can still get a global, like if you put it into Apple, like, yeah, it's overseas company, but it still operates in New Zealand, still sell product in New Zealand.
So I guess the big thing is when it comes to, shares have performed really well. Property hasn't performed really well over the past few years, but really it all comes down to the law of averages over time, right, Mike? And, shares might be, performing really well right now. Property's a bit undercooked, but reverting to the mean is what we believe.
Yep, reversion to the mean.
Let us know in the comment section. I'm sure there are some people with big opinions on why property has turned to custard. We will leave it there. Make sure to subscribe, review, and like, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.